He set the tone for his papacy very early on as well, didn't he? By washing the feet, not of fellow members of the clergy, as Jesus Christ washed the feet all those many millennia ago, but he washed the feet of prisoners ahead of Easter. I think it was back in 2013, wasn't it? But he went to the prison in Rome and washed the feet of prisoners, including those of female prisoners.
That's right, and including non-Christians. So the practice of a bishop washing someone's feet is meant to remind the bishops of their proper humility. And of course, as you say, Christ washed the feet of the apostles 2,000 years ago. It was the action of a slave to a master, and it's meant to show that the bishop is a slave to God in the service of humanity. Francis was a pope of many firsts, and he loved new symbols, and this was a good symbol. He washed the feet of men and women. He washed the feet of Christians and non-Christians, including Muslims. He went to the prison to find the most marginalised and, in a sense, despised people. Now, you can get carried away with Francis's symbolism a bit. I mean, he was a wonderful man and a good man and very, very sincere. But there's a sense perhaps that sometimes the symbolism was very important, but where did it lead? It certainly led to an emphasis on concern for the poor, but I think his critics would think there was a certain confusion in the Francis papacy, which had some difficult consequences for the church. But he was a genius at things like that, paying his own hotel bill, ringing up his own newsagent, wearing plain shoes rather than red slippers. Although the red slippers were never meant to be a symbol of luxury, the red was meant to symbolise the blood of the martyrs. But nonetheless, he had a good sense of trying to engage, to get the symbolism to engage the popular church and to reflect the ethos of the church.
And it's interesting because he wasn't, he was an outsider. He was the first Latin American Pope. And I was just reading over the last few hours that he's actually not going to be buried at St. Peter's. He's going to be buried at the Basilica of St. Mary Major, which I think is the first time since the 17th century that a Pope's been buried there. So he's even in death doing things differently.
That's right. So he's a Pope of many firsts. He was the first Pope from the Americas, not only from Latin America, but from anywhere in the Americas. He was the first Jesuit to be a Pope. He chose a papal name, Francis, after Francis of Assisi, from a saint who was not only not a Pope, but not a bishop, not even a priest. Francis of Assisi was not an ordained priest. Now, it's early on. We need to pay tribute to a good and holy and decent man of God. But it's fair to say that he was known more for his political stances than his theological stances, but he always had the great decency, when he was writing about climate change or economics or anything, to say, I as Pope have no religious authority here. In other words, Catholics don't have to agree with my economic or climate change views or whatever, but this is what I passionately believe. In the field of doctrine, I think the liberal progressives would be as disappointed in that papacy as the conservatives were, because there was a sense of confusion. So liberal progressives would have hoped when he started out that they might end up with women priests or, complete acceptance of the divorced back into communion and a whole lot of other things. Well, none of that actually happened. He made a lot of gestures towards that, and the gestures sometimes were very valuable in themselves because they showed the love of the people in any marginalised group. But he actually left behind a good deal of confusion in some of those areas, and so the next Pope will have some confusion to clear up, probably. But of course, it's right that today we just remember a good and holy man and a faithful servant of God.
And the decision to pause campaigning, the Prime Minister's pausing, is that more a political stunt, do you think, today, or is that an appropriate show of respect? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a proper sign of respect from both men. So, Kieran, I've been fantastically critical of both Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton in this campaign. I don't think they're giving the nation the leadership it needs. But let me say, I have no doubt at all that these are both very good men, Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton. And in the days when I was still on, more frequent speaking terms with the PM than I am now, he talked to me sometimes a little bit about his Catholic faith. And I think, Anthony Albanese has a genuine affection for his Catholic upbringing and for his Christian brothers' education and for the many priests and brothers who are very good to him. And I think both the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition have done a good thing. I mean, they're both good men. Politics in Australia does not involve passionate hatreds and shocking violence and so forth. And on a day like this, just as a sign of respect to a great religious leader, I think they both have served the nation well by the dignity and the kindness with which they've responded to this situation.
Foreign editor at The Australian, Greg Sheridan, I very much appreciate your reflections on this today, a momentous day, but I think we'll be talking about this over weeks to come, with the conclave to come and the funeral for Pope Francis. So, we'll be talking about the Vatican for a while yet. Greg, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.